it's thanks to the support of our sponsors that Property Tribes remains a free-to-use community resource. So I'm delighted to welcome a really big brand as a new sponsor of Property Tribes. It's Experian. We've all heard of them, and I'm delighted to welcome Mark Goodfellow. And Mark, you really wanted to engage with the landlord community on a very exciting new initiative, which I regard as a complete win-win for everybody. It's the rental exchange. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Of course, and yeah, hi Vanessa. Yeah, so the rental exchange was introduced back in 2013 through the Big Issue, the homeless charity. They came to us with the idea of incorporating rental payment information into a consumer's credit report in exactly the same way as a homeowner has their mortgage payments referenced. Because if you rent today, either socially or privately, that information does not appear on your credit report. So to create fairness and equality across the housing sector, the rental exchange was introduced into the social housing sector in the first instance back in June 2013. So we're working with housing associations, local authorities to incorporate that rental payment information to help social housing tenants. As of this year, we're in a position to open up the rental exchange to the private rented market in exactly the same way, because the majority of tenants are good payers. They pay regularly, they pay on time, and especially within some of the urban areas, people could be paying up to £2,000-3,000 a month on rent, which is their biggest monthly outlay, which is not yet visible on their credit report.
And, you know, it's the transparency of all of this that I think benefits everybody involved, because it benefits tenants, obviously, because they can help build their credit rating, perhaps to buy their own home in the future, but also for landlords and lettings agents to see the payment history of the tenant.
That's right, yeah. So tenants, as I say, are good customers. They pay regularly, they pay on time. Now, the way credit scoring works, it's a bit of a strange entity because you have to qualify for a credit agreement. Then when you make those payments on time, that obviously improves your credit file. So if a consumer wishes then to apply for further credit, that evidence will be used by the lender to assess the suitability for the product. So tenants have a contractual tenancy agreement with their landlord to pay their rent every month, and by doing so, then tenants will get the benefit of having an improved credit file without having to take on those additional debts. The other key advantage to the consumer is that in addition to an enhanced credit score, the data that's on the credit report will also be enhanced by the rental account, so that that customer can improve their what's called digital proof of identity. So if you and I wish to apply for insurance, for example, then that lender or insurance company has to verify your identity. So they will do that by verifying what you self-disclose on an application against two independent data sources on your credit file. So if a tenant has an electoral roll registration and a rental account, then obviously that's the two proofs of identity to prove who they are and where they say they live. So the rental exchange is primarily there to help the consumer improve their financial standing. Now, there is a benefit to landlords as well by contributing that data into the rental exchange. So tenants will obviously, when they pay regularly, because they know it's going to have an impact on their credit score, that will provide an incentive to ensure that they do pay on time, which from a landlord's perspective, they will be more likely to receive on-time payments.
Fantastic. And I think the other great thing is that from the landlord perspective is to be able to say to a prospective tenant, I would like to contribute your payment data to the rental exchange to help you build up your credit rating. That to me is a kind of marketing differentiator as well for the landlord.
That's right, yeah. So what we do find is that tenants will eventually approach a landlord or a letting agent that shares this information, because it's an opportunity for that tenant to improve their credit score. And also from the private rented sector, the rental exchange is an opportunity to give something back to the consumer, to help them with their onward journey through the property ladder. So yes, so there is that sort of corporate social responsibility angle that landlords can do something good for their customers.
No, I think it's very, very worthwhile. Now, there's different kind of two different categories of landlords and the way, in terms of the way they interact with the rental exchange. Could you just explain the two different, one's 100 or more properties, but there is opportunity for landlords with less properties?
Correct, that's right. So the way the rental exchange is working, we have a procedure in place where any corporate landlord or private landlord or letting agent that owns or manages more than 100 properties is invited and eligible to transfer that data directly into the rental exchange. And experienced staff are on hand to actually support those organisations through the implementation process, and the implementation process involves working in line with data protection legislation to ensure that we meet the Information Commissioner's requirements, and also the physical transfer of that rental payment information. So that's one of the primary routes for organisations to share their data. Now, where landlords own or have managed less than 100 properties, we are working with a number of data partners, who are offering services to landlords to actually facilitate the transfer of that data. The other proposition that we have in the market is via another organisation called Credit Ladder. Now, this is a tenant-led proposition. So if their landlord does not transfer data directly to us, or does not use one of the data partners that Experian are working with, then the tenant themselves can register on the Credit Ladder platform, and their payments to their landlord go via that platform. And then, because Credit Ladder can verify the payment, then they contribute that data into the rental exchange.
Oh, fantastic. And I can imagine that you're building up a huge amount of data that in future there may be other ways that it can be used to help landlords reference tenants and find tenants that pay the rent on time. A very good way of finding out those that kind of information.
That's right. So we're on a journey at the moment of trying to build our database. So we're working with the likes of the National Approved Letting Scheme, NALS, who have been an advocate supporter, the Residential Landlord Association, and the National Association of Residential Landlords, ALA. So we're working with a number of organisations to actually try and promote this to the sector. So as we go through and build up the volumes, our ultimate plans will be to actually feed this data through the Experian credit checking facilities. Yep. So from my conversations with the landlord, a landlord wants to know two things. Is this prospective tenant going to pay their rent? And will they look after my property? So by linking that previous rental payment history through the credit check-in, it gives a lot of granular insight into the risk profile of that customer and their likelihood of paying rent on time.
Fantastic. Well, I can't express, Mark, what a great initiative I think this is. I think it's community-led, community-driven, which is very, very healthy when everybody gets behind something. And I think it's really just, as I said, a win for everybody involved. And, thank you very much for joining the Property Tribes community, supporting landlord learning and education. And we do encourage our landlords to engage with the rental exchange and provide this data, because going forwards it's going to have a very positive impact for everybody involved in the private rented sector. So thank you very much, Mark, for your support.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.